And hello, everybody. We kind of missed our intro there because I was too stupid to hit go live on the button, but here we are, 30 seconds late. Anyway, I'm John, your host, the host of the TSG Live Crew Lounge, and I have a motley crew of some surly-looking people here today, and we're going to talk about something that I think we're all pretty excited about. Don't we look excited?
I am.
I am excited. It's been a lot of work getting prepared for what's on my background, the Rails by the Bay National NMRA Convention. We've been working day and night, 24/7 or 27/4. I'm not even sure whether I'm coming or going. I've been doing so much. But we're going to talk about this convention. It's the online convention that's going to be happening here in a couple of weeks. And so with that, we have Pat LaTorres, a friend and modeler, Bruce Morden, same, Phil Edholm here. Most of us are on the tech committee, and Frank Markovich, who's the acting PCR president right now. So why don't we get started this way? Phil, you have that presentation queued up. We're going to do a little.
I sure do.
Okay.
Here we go.
We'll do a little presentation, and anybody who's interested in asking questions, you're welcome to ask in our text chat on the side here. And let's get started. Here comes our presentation. Take it away, Phil.
So really to start off with, let's talk about what we're doing at the convention and why you don't want to miss it. So I think there are three great reasons to not miss the NMRA 2021 Rails by the Bay. The first thing we're going to talk about is amazing content. The layout tours, the clinics, the keynotes. It's just a lot of great content for you to help in your modeling and improve your modeling. The second thing is, this is really the NMRA event. If you think about it, the national convention is where we see virtually everyone in the hobby who really wants to be there. All the MMRs are there, lots of opportunities. And what you're going to find out is we've really tried to make this a really social opportunity. So in many ways, in the convention we did, which was the PCR convention, which was in late April, we used a lot of the same technology and techniques we're going to use in this convention. And we got a number of comments from people that they found it to be a better social convention than a physical convention because it's actually easier to meet people, as we'll explain as we talk about how we're putting this together. And the final thing is, it's an amazing bargain. So why don't I throw it back over to John, and John, talk a little bit about kind of how we structured the convention.
Right. So we have basically three spaces in which we're running the convention. Two of them are for sharing content, meaning the clinicians sharing content with the attendees. And those would be the Zephyr Clinic track on the left there and the Daylight track on the right. And then in the middle, you see something called the Great Hall. And the Great Hall is where all the social interaction happens. So if say you're watching a clinic and you have a question that you want to ask the clinician, after the clinic, there's a space in the Great Hall where the clinician is going to be available for you to have that interaction for, an hour or more, depending how many people are there and how long they can stay. So that's kind of the basics of how it's set up. In addition to the clinic goes on, which is what I just referred to, where the clinicians are available for Q&A after their clinics. The Great Hall is also going to have dozens of other breakout rooms, including many with special interests like topics. So there's going to be an LD SIG and OPSIG room. There's going to be a room for smaller scales. I think there's going to be a narrow gauge room. So there's going to be all these different things that if you're interested in it, you go into the room and you'll find other people who share your interests. And those are usually the kind of people that you want to meet at these things because, for example, if you're into operations or you want to be into operations, you can meet other operators and they may be from your same area, which means you might be able to go to an op session because it would be someone that you didn't know before you went to the convention. So,
and John,
sure.
a few comments on this. the beauty of the way this is being done. So you go to the Great Hall after a clinic, or at lunch, or at dinner, or in the morning at 8 o'clock when you first arrive, and you'll be able to see who is in a breakout. Is a breakout occupied? How many people are there? And the thing that's so exciting about this, if you have a meeting with 500 people, in one meeting, you have one person speaking. But if you put those people in 100 meetings with 5 each, 100 people are speaking. So it turns out in smaller groups, you have an opportunity to really meet people, to understand them and talk to them. One other thing we're doing that is actually a recent add is we've added vendor focus sections. So we actually have 5 vendors. We're hoping to have more that will be at the convention and will be either lunch or dinner, have a time for about an hour and a half where they'll be able to meet with you and talk to you about their products. So all of those will be on the website. So I think it's pretty exciting to see some of the vendors that are coming to the event.
Yeah, that is pretty cool because there isn't really a national train show this year. So now this isn't going to replace a national train show, but we are going to have some vendors available, which is really cool. So
one other thing to bring up in here is that if you have a special interest that you don't see here, rail marine operations, maybe something you're really interested in, there's room for a breakout room so you folks can start something that you're interested in and maybe pull other people in, because rail marine operations are really big in certain parts of the country and have been in the past. So this is a chance for you to have your own special interest group and maybe bring something back to life.
And Pat, just a moment to explain to people how that works. So on the website, you can propose and say, I'd like to do something special. What we'll do is we'll create a breakout for the topic. What we're asking you then to do is to pick a time, one of the lunches and dinners. So one of the things we've done in the convention is it's set up where lunch and dinner are 2-hour breaks. So what that means is that's a great time for socialization, to go to these rooms, go meet people. So if you say, for example, you want to do marine railroading and that's a focus, that's an area, we'll have a breakout for that. And then we'll ask you to host a birds of a feather in that breakout during one of the lunches and dinners. So as you get to the convention, you're going to see a schedule of lots of these birds of a feather where you can go and there's someone hosting and people will come to talk about that topic. And it's really an opportunity to meet railroaders on the topics you want to talk about that are knowledgeable about it or are looking for information that you can help. So great opportunities. Thanks, Pat, for pointing that out. That was super.
And folks, take it back to the modelers in your area, because I don't think everybody here is from around the San Francisco Bay Area. So take it to modelers that are local to you and start drumming up interest now. So when the convention gets here, you've got something to approach the tech committee and say, we need a breakout room for this, and they're going to go out of their way to help you. And that's a big part of this. This is your convention. We're putting it on, but it's not for us. And that's really an important point.
Well, one of the breakouts and Birds of a Feather is going to be focused on the B&O Railroad, which is, as far as I remember, not in California in any reasonable way.
Valid point.
As a narrow gauger, mainly myself, having a narrow gauge room is really great because we do have the National Narrow Gauge Convention, which this year is in Hickory, where in North Carolina, but a lot of people won't be able to go. And this is a chance for the narrow gauge guys that are really active to meet together and talk about issues. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. Just one comment on this. For those of you that haven't experienced this, you'll notice at the bottom right, there's the N&Z, the small scales room. And again, going back to what we did at the PCR, we actually added that on Friday night before a Saturday convention. And there was really no publicity that existed. But when people came into the Great Hall in that convention, they saw the list of breakouts, and one of them was the N&Z room. And because there are a lot of N&Z people and most of the convention content was more narrow gauge and larger scale focused, that was an opportunity to talk. And literally within about 45 minutes of starting the convention in the morning, there were people in that space talking about N&Z and small scale modeling, and they were really different people there throughout the day. So, one of the things is it's a great opportunity to go interact with people just like you would at a convention, except the beauty of this is it's a lot easier to jump into a breakout room than it is to break into a conversation between three people that look like they know each other for 20 years at a convention. And that's why it's actually easier in this virtual world to meet new people. You know what, though? I think we've talked a lot about that. I want to jump on to one of the really exciting things. Unfortunately, I think we lost Bruce momentarily to talk about all the clinics that are in the at the convention. And Bruce, you've done just an amazing job of putting together all these clinics. You tell us a little bit about what's coming and what's happening in terms of clinics.
So as Bill's slide says, we've got over 70 clinics altogether, and there's a listing there of master model railroaders. Some of them, Jack's got a great little clinic on photo. What he's doing using Photoshop and photo elements to do some design work, and it's a really neat clinic. So that's just one of them. But we've got a whole lot of stuff. One of the things that we do at almost every convention is the Layout Design Special Interest Group has like a 4-hour presentation on layout design for the beginner. And so what's happening this year is instead of doing that, Byron Henderson, who usually leads up that clinic, is going to do 2 hours worth of make only new mistakes. So he's going to go over layout design and talk about it for 2 full hours. So that's going to be a really great clinic. Clark Kooning is from Canada. This is not just a local group. These are international. We've got clinic presenters from London, England, and Auckland, New Zealand. And like I said, Clark is from Canada, and he's doing a really neat little clinic on tools. He's actually done this before, and he's combined a couple of his clinics on tools, and it's a really neat clinic. We've got some professional railroaders or former professional railroaders that are going to come and share some of their experiences. Breezy Gust is going to talk about a day in the life of a railroad dispatcher. And we've got a whole panel of railroad dispatchers that are going to be on Wednesday night, and you can hear their experiences firsthand. So we've got these prototype clinics where you can find out what actually happened on the railroad, but we've got a whole list of modeling clinics to share different techniques in modeling. And it's not just how to build a kit, but we've got things like electronics and 3D printing, and we've got painting and photography and scenery, layout construction, all that's included. We've got clinics that are oriented towards operations, so the OPSIG guys that's something for them. A lot of prototype clinics. Speaking of OPSIG, apparently the Silicon Valley Lines, which is a local group in San Jose, is going to allow at least 30 engineers to operate on their layout virtually. And that's also going to be part of the convention. So just like regular conventions, there'll be actual operating on layouts. Just like regular conventions, there's going to be layout tours and discussion about layouts. So we've got 6 different panels in the evening.
Bruce, we've got some slides in just a moment on the layout tours. So what I wanted to do is jump, because so what we've done to make sure that these are all high quality, because if you think about it, if we have a Zoom meeting and somebody does a clinic in the Zoom meeting, if there's an issue with the internet or something happens, it ruins the whole clinic. So what we've done is we've actually recorded all of these in a Zoom meeting, just like you would have it, and you'll be able to participate in that. And the clinician will be able to interact with you using a Q&A tool in the clinic tracks that'll be available. But here what we want to do is show you just some of those recorded clinics to show you how exciting this content is to actually see. So let's go ahead and jump and see that.
there's no sound for this part. So here's Jack Burgess doing his Photoshop clinic. This is Tony Custer. You might have heard of him talking about an update on his nickel plate railroad. This is a clip from Paul Hobbs's 50 Years of Amtrak. This is our friend Ed Marin doing the focus stacking. This is a clinic from Seth Newman about communications. This is Mark Jewett. You've seen him in the NMRA magazine. There's Clark Kooning talking about, this was actually his 40 minutes with Clark. Oh, who's this good-looking guy? Frank, that's you. This was, I think this was something from Cliff Linton. This one is from Paul Hobbs talking about private cars. Forget the gentleman's name, but this is a really cool traction layout. This was a model, this was that. Oh, they're going too fast. That's Don Wynn, who talked about scratch kit bashing. They're going too fast, but that's okay. But the point that I'm trying to make here is these are all high quality clinics. And what Phil was talking about just a minute ago was that they were all recorded ahead of time. So there are no sort of interruptions from the phone ringing, for example. Oh, I have to get that. There's no interruptions from having bad internet service. I know I've tried to watch some of the live stuff that's been put on over the past year and a half that we've been in sequestered in our homes because of the pandemic. And one of the things that struck me was during a live presentation, wherever the person was, they had weather coming in, right? In the Midwest, when the weather comes in, everybody has to shut everything down and batten down the hatches because they might get a tornado or something hit. And when the weather comes in, their internet service goes to pot. And that's what happened. I was trying to watch someone, I believe they were weathering something, and the weather came in. Isn't that funny? They were weathering when the weather came in, and the internet just went to complete poop, and it just didn't look good anymore. So we don't have that problem when you've produced the stuff ahead of time. And that's one of the things that I've been working on tirelessly. If I look tired, it's because I am, from doing all this work on these clinics. So, but the point though is to make it as high of quality as possible for the convention. And I think that
absolutely on my clinic, and I know other people, I went through about 3 practice runs. One with the Coast Division, Phil led that, but also just with some friends and with another guy who had built the layout with me at the museum. So we tightened it up. I got the time right. It's really hard when you do a clinic live or virtual. The timing, it can really be make or break it. So I got a lot of comments and I made a lot of changes. So I think most of the clinicians did something similar.
And
Absolutely.
I think an interesting point is Phil mentioned earlier, the clinic goes on discussions afterwards. There'll be a chance for you to send the Q&A in. And unlike at a live convention where you get to the end of the time slot and we've got to get out of the room now because there's another clinic coming in. No, we're going to just take the clinic to another room and let you keep going. And that's an asset. And this has all been a learning experience for everybody involved, but we think we're putting together a better program for you, the attendee, that you'll be able to see things and not be handicapped by some of the issues that have affected even a live convention, is that the clinics will go on even though the time slot is ended and somebody else can come into that room.
And one of the other things that we should point out is that unlike a real convention where you have to make choices as to which clinic to go to, all these are recorded. And if you're an attendee, you can go back and look at the clinics that you missed for until August 7th. So it's for another month after the clinic starts. You can go back and look at those clinics again. So it makes it even better than an in-person clinic or an in-person convention.
Right. And I think this point about the interaction with the clinician is really, really important. So the first thing is during the clinic, you can ask a question. And if they say, hey, that's a question to answer because it's going to take a little more time, they can say, I'll answer that and the clinic goes on. Or they can answer it in text, or they may say, well, it's answered on in the next part of my clinic. But you can have that interaction during the clinic, which normally when you're sitting in a room, you really can't do that. You're just sitting and watching somebody in the clinic until the end, and they say, okay, now we're done. Let's ask for questions. What we're doing now, instead of staying in that room for 10 minutes of questions and then chasing the clinician down the hall, we're going to all move over to the clinic goes on. And the way we set it up, if you happen to notice on that slide, we actually have 3 clinic goes on for each track. So the 9 o'clock gets its own space, the 10 o'clock, and the 11 o'clock. So this is really, I think, one of the most interesting things about going to a convention. If you look at a convention, there are probably 10 clinics and clinicians you really want to spend some time with. And the great opportunity in this convention is you can do that. But like Bruce says, then the rest of the clinics you can watch and get the clinic content. Now, one caveat, we will not be recording any of the breakouts. So what happens in the Great Hall stays in the Great Hall. So that basically says those are just like in a room where you just have a conversation versus in these video meetings where they're recorded. So the next thing I thought we should talk about is actually our featured speaker, our keynote speaker for the event, and is Michael Gross. And just a couple of comments on Michael from the group, who's a well-known actor and a very, very much a model railroader and short line owner. So he's going to be doing the keynote address. Now that'll be scheduled during dinner. I believe it's on Friday night.
It is. It's on Friday.
Exactly.
5. Yeah.
So Michael gave the keynote a few years ago in Bakersfield at a PCR, and it was really one of the best keynotes I've ever heard. I've gone to most of the PCRs and a lot of the nationals. He had both railroad people really interested and their significant others or non-railroad people. He's a great speaker, and we're lucky to have him.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Yeah. If I could dive in for a second, there's a question from Dave Hammer about, are there going to be groups like railroad museums, historical societies, etc.? Part of that is if somebody's involved in a historical society, again, contact the tech committee. They'll set up a breakout room for you. There are a lot of clinicians that Bruce has touched on who are professionals in the fields they're talking on. Steve Gust, who is a dispatch instructor for the Union Pacific, Clifton Linton, who worked in the hazardous materials industry. So a lot of these people have skin in the game. They've done this stuff. And as far as the museums and historical societies, we've solicited a lot of them. Whether they will get back to us, I don't know. If you're involved in one of these and you want to get involved deeper, contact Ed, contact John, contact some of the people on the committee, Bruce, and they will get you in. We have space for you.
So we already have a couple of breakout rooms where there's museum people involved. But let me go back to clinics first, because Frank is giving a clinic on a layout that he built for the Magic of Model Railroading, which is now being featured at the California Railroad Museum. So railroad museums, definitely. We've got 2 clinics on the California Railroad Museum. And in terms of the breakout rooms, the B&O Society is going to have a breakout room. They've already said they are. And there's a breakout room. Now great museum, but there's going to be a breakout room for women in the model railroading hobby. And one of the people that's going to be featured is Michelle from the Colorado Model Railroad Museum. So there are model railroad museums involved already. But like Pat says, if you've got a model railroad museum or a railroad museum or a historical society, contact us and we'll have a breakout room for you.
I want to tell you something that everybody forgot about, which is the Madera Sugar Pine Railroad or company that Scott McGee does this amazing presentation that he also did for the PCR convention. It's one of the best presentations I think I've seen. And that's what turned into the Yosemite Mountain Sugar Pine Railroad now. So that's a tourist railroad that gets covered in the clinics. And he's going to be in a breakout room doing his Q&A after that. So there's a lot of cool stuff. And, I'm surprised you guys didn't mention this. So I'm going to mention it now because I think it's really cool. When you go...
Scott's the manager of the railroad. I mean, he's hands-on.
Yeah, he's the GM there, if I'm not mistaken.
He is.
But when you go to an in-person convention, you look at your timetable, right? That's what we call the little book that tells you what's going on for anybody who hasn't been to one of these conventions. You look at your timetable and you figure out what you really want to go look at, what you really want to go see. Which clinic do I want to see? Or if they're doing layout tours that day, you look at it and go, well, which clinics am I going to miss? Because I have to get on a bus and I'll be gone all afternoon. So I'm going to miss all 3 clinics or all 4 clinics while I'm gone. That doesn't happen at a virtual convention for a couple of reasons. One, you don't have to go anywhere. But the other thing is we're going to have the content available for about 4 weeks after it already happened. So if you miss Frank's presentation about the magic of scale model railroading at the CSRM, you can watch it on a replay, right? So you didn't miss anything. You can't do that on a regular convention. You just miss stuff, right? The same with the layout tours. If you go to a real convention, you have to pick which layouts you're going to go look at, and you're going to miss some because the layout tours kind of happen usually at the same time. Not at the virtual convention.
I think it's also a very different experience. So yeah. I would say that layout tours in a normal convention are more tourism than they are model railroading. I mean, the problem is, so you show up on a bus of 45 people to somebody's layout that can maybe have 15 people inside. And so you have 3 shifts going in. So 3 shifts of 15 coming in for 15 to 20 minutes each. And during that time you're in there, the owner's trying to keep the layout running. They're worried to death about it's going to get damaged, ... There's really no opportunity to have a conversation. Again, what we're doing here is exactly the same thing where we're taking advantage to make this social. So you're going to be able to see the layout tour, see what they built, then have them talk about it with other layout owners about things, but then be able to go interact with them. And if you saw something you're really interested, say, hey, I'd really like to know how you did that seam. How did you get that effect on that hill? How did you get that rock to look that way? And you'll actually have the opportunity to have those conversations, which quite frankly, you can't have in a normal convention. So I think that again makes it really exciting. And in fact, we actually have the layout tours. I think we can share those up, just some examples of some of the layout tours that are on tour. And in fact,
I would say while you're retrieving that, Phil, I want to mention something else that I think is really cool about this, which is, and I don't know the answer to this question. I was really hoping that our friend Paul could be here today because I meant to ask him, maybe one of you guys has talked to Paul and knows the answer to this, but are they going to do Q&A in the breakout rooms after the layout owners panel discussions? Do you guys know?
I believe that they are going to do that. It'll probably again be some while it's happening and then some as a clinic goes on. So Phil's got this up. I'll let him take it from here.
Yeah, no,
cool.
So this was just really simple. This is there are 2 slides here. If you go to the website, all the layouts that are open, and actually we put this slide together for about 2 weeks ago. We're over 40 layouts that are on tour now. So if you look at those, these were some of the just amazing layouts. Obviously Jim Diaz is, I mean, you guys know these layouts very well and have seen them. So any comments on the layouts?
Well, I know there's at least one layout that has not been opened for a convention to my knowledge, which is, I'm going blank on it now.
Give us some clues, Pat.
The Boston and Albany.
Chuck or Aftic, yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe it's ever been opened. And so this is going to be a chance for everybody to see it. And I know where he happens to live. It's a tight parking neighborhood. And even getting a bus in there would be a real bear. Well, you can go and look at the videos that John has put together in advance. You can look at it, and then you can look at it a second time and say, oh, I missed that, and this is something I'm really interested in. And there's no pressure on you. And then after the fact, when you go to the meet the layout owners, you'll have your questions ready in advance. And as Phil mentioned, the layout owner is not going to be worried about is that train running or is it going to go off the end of the track. So he just focuses on what's going on.
And the cool thing here is
layouts right now is 48.
Right.
We're almost at 50 layouts. So it's 48 layouts.
And the cool thing here is you can come in and look at those. They're on the website. You can look at the video tours that are on the website and think about, would you like to talk to those layout owners? Would you like that opportunity? So, this really is the opportunity to see all those different layouts and be able to have those interactions.
And some of these layouts no longer exist, so you get to see things. You get to go back in time.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, I don't know if he's here, guys, but Dave Adams is going to do a special, and I want to talk to him about this. I asked him to call in to this show to be a guest panelist for a couple of minutes when he's available, because he's going to do a tribute to Jim Vale. The Glenwood and I can't remember the name of it. Glenwood and Black. I can't remember the name of it, but everyone knows the layout. Jim Vale's HON3 layout. He wrote for the narrow gauge and short line and narrow gauge Gazette for ages.
Well, and also if you go to the NMRA museum at the California State Railway Museum, at that facility, in that display are a number of just the amazing models that came from that layout. There are, I think, 2 or 3 of them. And so, it's very much one of the renowned layouts, and that many people have seen through the years. So
it's the Glenwood and Black Creek. I'm sure of it.
At the museum, Jim's West Side Lumber sawmill is one of those, and it's beautiful. That's worth going to the museum for that.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, it sounds like Dave is actually standing by. Is it okay with you guys if I bring him in for a second?
Bring him in.
Bring him in. That would be great.
Okay, here, let's bring Dave. We'll just have his voice talking, but here we go. Hi, Dave. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Oh, good. You look especially good today.
Well, I look like a D.
Yeah.
Other than that, believe it, and the thing is, my laptop just absolutely froze up, and a hard reset was done with by removing the battery, because that was the only way to get control of anything. So right now I'm in a world of hurt, but so we're on a computer without a video. Anyway, a couple of things. One, Glenwood and Black Creek is the name of Jim Vale's, or was the name of Jim Vale's railroad, and we do have one of your fine videos up on the website to view it, and where he put together a panel for Wednesday night to basically talk about Jim and his railroad. So the panelists are Craig Symington, who is one of the columnists in the Gazette that started writing columns several years before Jim Vale passed away, and those two guys became real good friends and shared a lot of things back and forth, so he'll be a real contributor to that. Another one of the panelists is Jerry Boudreau, who is now up in Oregon, and unfortunately standard gauge rather than narrow gauge anymore, but he's an old line friend of Jim Vale's down here when Jim was getting things off the ground. And the other individual is Guy Cantwell, who's also doing some other clinics at this convention. And Guy was part of the Glenwood and Black Creek Derlin Branch operating group for a number of years, and has got quite a history there. So we hope to be able to put together a fairly entertaining panel and kind of bring people up on the speed and offer some insights that aren't available in video or some of the magazine articles that Jim has written.
Well, that should be really good, Dave, and I'm glad that you were able to put that together. So you mentioned Guy Cantwell. He did, I think, 2 or maybe 3 clinics, and his layout is on part of the layout tours. And I think on the Friday night, which I think is July 9th, I think he's going to be one of the layout tour panelists, people that I'm going to be talking to, if I remember right. I was talking to Paul yesterday, and he told me everybody that's that's going to be there because I'm going to be filling in for Paul that night.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it because I know all these, you know, it's fun because I know all these people. I did videos on all the layouts, and it's good just to catch up with people.
Yeah. So, John, on Friday night, you're going to be talking to Jack Burgess and Guy and Howard Lloyd and Tony Thompson.
Oh,
so I think
perfect.
you've got pretty much an all-star lineup there to interview. You can't beat that.
I feel like I'm not worthy. I shouldn't be on that.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be the person talking to them.
Yeah, I know Paul that Friday evening he had a conflict with the Meet the Modeler program on the other side of the house. So he and I are going to be over there. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, let's talk about that Meet the Modeler thing because now I think Earl is doing that, but aren't you involved too, Frank? With the Meet
Earl
the
and I are sharing that. Earl's going to host 3. I'm going to host 3. We have 6 modelers doing various examples. Since there's no contest, we can't do a contest virtually at this convention. This is to take its place. And honestly, we didn't have too much time. It was decided about a month ago. All of the models that are being shown were filmed, were videotaped. I'm an old film guy. Were videotaped and edited. A couple of them we've gone through 2 or 3 iterations to tighten them up. And there's Ed Marin's doing one. There are 2 from the PCR that were very good, including one that Earl did, and he tightened it up and changed it. There's a lot of really good hints and tips on building models in this. These are all modelers that, if they don't have an NMR yet, they will. They're headed that way. They're excellent modelers, and I've seen 5 of the 6 have been submitted, and I've reviewed them along with Earl. So we'll split up the announcing of them, and then we'll be in the breakout room to answer any questions.
Okay.
So there is a breakout room for that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, I think, because, yes, we have clinics. Yes, we have layout tours. Yes, we have all this stuff. But we also have a lot of tips. So, and we also need to get Phil some oil for his chair, I think.
Is it a squeaky chair?
It is a really, unless that's just you.
No, it's a squeaky chair.
Oh, man. So, yeah, I'm really excited about that. So, hey, Dave, since you're still on, are you also going to do a breakout session with the Jim Vale panel?
Yeah, we can if there's interested. That wouldn't be any problem moving everybody over. The rest of the crew has agreed to do that if need be. So,
okay, cool.
We should be set there.
All right. I'm excited about that. I'm trying to think of a relevant question to ask somebody, but this is great. Phil, do you want to bring back the presentation real quick and have some more talk on this?
I think it's there. I'm sharing it. I think, yep, there it is.
All right.
So, I think this was the point. What you just heard is, the discussion about can you go over and into a breakout, over to the Great Hall? And that's really what this is. So the way to think about this is 70 hours of railroading. Basically, it's 5 days. We're opening at 8 a.m. Pacific time. For those of you on the East Coast, it's a huge benefit because you get to sleep in and start at 11. Now, on the other end, the last clinic is at 9, so that's midnight East Coast time. But we're going to be open till 10 for continued interactions. And I think this real opportunity to interact with people is what the convention's all about. So, in the last year and a half, we've had an awful lot of what I think of as Zoom meetings where people presented and did things. What we're really trying to do here is change the dynamic to make it much more like a real convention in terms of the interactions. The other thing, by the way, that I think is really exciting, and I think for everyone who participates in this, is participating in really the experiment of how do we begin to think about hybrid conventions in the future? If you look forward to 2022, 2023 and beyond, the world is going to go hybrid. Businesses are going hybrid, workplaces are going hybrid, and a lot of conventions are going to go hybrid. So as a railroad community, is this something we can do where those people who can't fly across the country can participate. And quite frankly, that brings me to what I think is probably the last and almost most exciting thing about this convention, which is it's a great deal. So for your $49 registration for $50, you essentially get everything we've been talking about. And as you sit and look at that, there's something I want to make sure everybody realizes, which is you don't have to get on an airplane to participate.
I'd pay $50 just so I don't have to fly somewhere.
Exactly. By the way, I'm flying on Monday. Tomorrow morning, I'm on a 7:45 flight to Miami, and I am dreading it. So the fact that you don't have to get on an airplane. The other way to think about this is if you go to a physical convention, by the time you add up all the costs, the convention costs, the hotel costs, the transportation costs, the airfare costs, renting a car if you want it, transfers, all those different pieces, it's easy to spend $2,000 to go to a convention. So the idea of being able to go to a national convention, not just for the clinics, but for the layout tours and the interaction and social, I think makes this really an exciting opportunity. And I'll ask you guys. You guys have been to a lot more conventions than I have. Isn't this a great opportunity to go for a convention for people that haven't been able to go?
It really is. And I'm going to comment. I'd like to know how you keep it under $2,000. I've gone to Miami, probably cost me $4,000,
Yep.
and most of them really, even one in Sacramento cost me more than $2,000, and I'm an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from Sacramento, but the hotels are fortunate, and food can just kill you. I'm not a big alcohol drinker, so that's not a big deal. But by the time you pay everything, you're at least $2,000, even when it's in your backyard.
Well, and I think there's another thing, which is, one of the things I hear all the time is it's hard for people to work to participate in the hobby. It's, if you're working and you've got a family and you get 4 weeks vacation, telling your family that I'm going to take 25% of the time off to spend at a convention is often hard to do. I know when I was working, very difficult for me when I was working full time. This is an opportunity to go to a convention while you're working. For example, I was talking to some folks on the East Coast. If you're on the East Coast, we really don't start until noon your time. And so if you miss the morning clinics, and by the way, you can watch them later and start at 3 o'clock, with 3 o'clock every day for the 4 days during the week and Saturday, you're going to get 75% of the time at the convention you would have gotten if you'd gone there the whole time, and you're still working. So if you're a working model railroader, this is a great opportunity to see what a national convention is all about without having to take a week away from your family and work to go do it. So again, pretty exciting. And if you haven't registered, go to just NMRA convention and jump in and register. So I think it's a great opportunity and a great convention for folks to go to.
And keeping things on the home front, your family's going to like it that you're not burning all of their vacation time for your hobby. So they want to go see Disney World, or they want to go to a national park. They can do that, and you've got your vacation time still saved up. I see a question down here. Will there be breakout rooms for manufacturers? We discussed it earlier. Yes, there will be rooms. We've got, Phil, is it 5 manufacturers so far?
So we have a breakout. There will be a breakout room for vendors. We call them vendor focuses. They will be at lunch and dinner. And I think if I go through it, Model Railroad Control Systems will be at lunch on Tuesday. Mini Prints will be at dinner on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we have Iowa Scale Engineering. And on Thursday, we have Bachman. And on Saturday, we have, and I'm going to pull a blank, it's the lighting company.
Darvin.
Yep. So we have five vendors, and I have 1 or 2 other vendors that expressed interest. By the way, if you're a vendor or you know a vendor, have them contact. You can't contact me. You can contact through John. And we would love to have you come and be in a room. It's great opportunity to meet with modelers. And by the way, just a side comment, I talked to Bob last night. So on Saturday, we did our first mailing to everyone, and that was about 203 people. As of today, we're up to almost 235. So one of the things that I've always said about this convention that's really interesting is there's no reason to register early, right? Because it's a virtual event. I mean, if you think about it, when you go to a regular convention, you basically have to book your airplane flights, you have to book your hotels. You just will buy the convention 4 months ahead. Here, because those don't exist, we're going to have a large number of people show up, and you really want to be part of this opportunity, because if this turns out to be a really big event, it may be a great opportunity to meet lots of people in the hobby around the country in your special interest areas, et cetera. So one of the things is, don't miss out on this opportunity, because it may not come again. Who knows if we'll really be able to build hybrid conventions in the future. So this may be a once in a lifetime opportunity to change kind of your interactions in the hobby. So I sell too much, so I'll stop talking.
I think an important point is that we're not trying to replace the in-person convention. We're trying to enhance the in-person experience. And that's for those of you who may be in other regions, and I'm looking at names, a lot of names I don't recognize, who may not be in the West Coast, you may be other parts of the country. There are ideas here that you can take home and say, okay, we can use these to enhance our regional conventions or our regional special interest meets. And we don't consider it plagiarism, we call it research. But you have these tools, anything that we've come up with, it's out there for you folks to take and make use of going forward. But this is not going to replace the in-person convention, and we know that. I don't think any of us want it to, but we want to make the in-person convention even better by providing these tools, the layout tours that you can go on without having to leave the convention hotel and spend 3 hours driving out to east wherever and getting back. Or I know some who've been on tour buses where the bus got lost and they spent 5 hours driving around up in Minnesota and never did get to where they were trying to get. So this is something that we can enhance your convention experience. The Silicon Valley line offer of the virtual operating session, which is something they've been doing. Railroad Prototype Modelers chat room, I'm sure if there isn't one already, contact Phil, contact John. They can set up a room. The breakout rooms are there for everybody. It's a great opportunity to meet people that you've never met before and get together with that.
On clinics taking a bus, I had one that was 30 miles from where the convention center was on a Saturday, but nobody knew about football, that there was going to be a game at a college nearby. Don't ask me the college, I'm not a football person. And instead of a half-hour drive, it took us 2.5 hours to get to the layout. And you're not going to have that problem. We won't talk about getting back. It was even worse. So I spent a whole day traveling.
That's crazy. That's definitely not something you planned for, I'm guessing, huh?
No.
Sorry, go ahead, Pat.
I guess it's something that hasn't been touched on is like every convention, this convention doesn't run itself, doesn't build itself, it doesn't happen. We're going to need bodies on site. On the website, there's a link to Sydney, and she needs volunteers. We have people working for all of the clinics. We've got people moderating the breakout rooms, helping people get around, because just like in a real convention, an in-person convention, you will have to get from point A to point B, except for us, we're doing it virtually rather than having to go down this hall and up that elevator and out that hallway. And we're going to need these people to help out. And Sydney's got a big list of volunteer positions she needs filled. It gives you a chance to help the convention happen. If in fact you're here and not registered, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but if you're not registered, there's a chance to get on and say you're working as an assistant with the Zephyr track on Wednesday for the afternoon session. Well, you can come to that session, and for that track, you will be included in the convention. To me, it'd make a lot more sense just to register. That way you got the whole convention lined up. The people, I've heard one person complain, well, why are they charging us $49 for this? And there are expenses in this, and I'm not going to downplay that. The technology we're using costs money. This is not a free event.
Pat, to be very fair, since I wasn't on the committee and I started participating in the tech committee after the convention had a lot of expenses before the decision to go virtual. So as a convention, you start doing advertising and putting ads in the magazines and that all has cost. And part of the convention has to recoup those costs because you have to pay for it. So I think the way I look at the $49 is it's really not about what it pays for. We have to put a convention on, pay for the cost of the convention. That's kind of built into the number. The real question is, what's the value to you? And, when basically a simple box car costs you $50 if you go buy it, which is going to have more impact on your ability as a modeling and your fun in the hobby, going and buying a simple box car or coming to the convention for 5 days and meeting hundreds of other modelers and learning things you can't learn, probably would never learn anywhere else. So I think that's the way to look at it, is don't worry about it's the cost side of things. People had to worry about how to pay for things that were done. I think the value is so high, it's just silly. And even if you have to miss a day, that's 20%. It's 5 days. If you can't come to one day, so what?
This is 5 trips to Starbucks.
Right. So the thing is, let's say you can come to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but your company says you have to do something on Friday. So you have to miss Friday. Well, the reality is you would have missed the whole physical convention. There's no way you could have gone because your company told you had to do something on Friday. Now you could take a couple of days off and go to the rest of the convention. You only missed 20% on Friday. The idea of saying, well, I can't go to the whole thing. The reality of a physical convention is binary. You either go or you don't go. You go to the whole thing, you don't go. This is the great opportunity to come and do most of the convention, even if you have to take some time off for work. So great opportunity for working folks.
And watch it on the replay.
Because it's all recorded, you can go back and watch it later.
Right. Absolutely. You don't really miss that much. Exactly.
You don't miss it.
The number of clinics that I've missed at Salt Lake City, a number of clinics that I missed because there was another clinic going on, or I had to do this job or had to do that job or wanted to go on a tour. It all adds up to this is a much better opportunity for you. And I'm going to go backwards in time because I was on the committee that started this convention. We were looking at an in-person convention, and when the pandemic hit and St. Louis canceled, we immediately started thinking, is this going to catch us? And we could have pulled the plug and said it's not going to happen, but we felt that the members of the NMRA deserved to have an opportunity. And then the Pacific Coast region did their convention last April, which was the same convention we're doing, the same technology we were using for this, though we're doing it on a much larger scale. And it's given us an opportunity to give back to the organization, to give back to our community that here we've got this event for you, and we think that we've got a good product out there. We think we've got a heck of a good package for you. And I'm going to say, if you don't come to this convention when you would have gone to an in-person convention, you're making an error. And that's a personal opinion.
I want to say something I thought of as Phil was talking about the value and giving the whole thing about if you miss 20% or whatever. Think about it this way. If you go to a physical in-person convention, you miss most of the clinics. There's no way around it. You can't be in 2 places or 3 places or 4 places at one time, right? There's usually many rooms, and they don't record any of it. So you miss most of that convention when you go to it in person. With this, You don't have to miss anything. Okay, hold on. We're not going to record the breakout rooms, but you will not miss any of the clinics. And that's saying something. I think that's a big, I hadn't really thought about that until you were just talking here a minute ago, Phil. That's, talk about a value. Geez.
No, absolutely. So here's the problem is I'm in a normal convention. Clinic lasts 45 minutes. There's about 12 minutes in the room to ask questions. I raise my hand, don't get called. I've got a really important, and by the way, this was the clinician I really wanted to find out about because the toughest problem I'm dealing with on my railroad. So now the clinic ends, he walks outside and I chase him down the hall and go to talk to him. That next clinic, I basically have decided not to go to it. But the great news here is you pick out those clinics where you really want to talk to the clinicians. Those are the ones where you go to the clinic goes on. But, if you, for example, go to the clinic goes on for 10 minutes and decide, you know what, I want to jump back and see the next clinic, you can. Or you can decide to go to the small scales room and talk NMC scale for a while. So there's all sorts of opportunities to go do those things, but you don't miss anything. Actually, if you'd like, I actually put up all of the breakout rooms on a slide. If you'd like, I can share that. Give me 2 seconds.
Do we have enough time to read them all?
No, but they're.
I'm being facetious here because there's just
no. I understand.
So many opportunities.
And just so everybody knows, all I did was pulled up all the work that Sydney has been doing and putting these together, and get that out of the way.
I see them. Sydney's put it in the comments down below. A bunch of them.
So these are all the ones that are scheduled. The ones on the left are defined. The ones on the right are ones that we made available, but then the vendor focus rooms are there. So one of the other things that we've done is you can actually walk in, go to the Great Hall. There'll be an information desk operator, just like when you walk into a train session. There's an information desk that tells you which track to go to, and you can basically say, hey, there were 4 of us that were in this session, and we were talking. And we want to go talk about this, or and you can basically have a room where you can go have a conversation as a small group. So what you see on the left are the ones, someone asked a question about prototype. So the Proto 87 SIG will be there. But I think prototype modelers would be another great one.
And a couple of the comments I've seen that people have made, one person was that, the hobby tends to brush off the youth. I think because of our use of technology, the younger people who could not afford to fly back to St. Louis or Salt Lake City are going to be able to attend this because all they've got to do is, they're even out of school, the lucky kids. They can just log on and come to the convention. Our tech committee has done an exceptional job. I don't like to use the term dumbing down, but for me, that's appropriate. But they try to aim the technology at the lowest common denominator. So those of us who maybe use a computer as a tool, but are not code writers and super tech geeks, can still get into it and work on it. And the help that we have in the Great Hall and some of the information directors that are out there to help you, that have been made available. There's a lot of assets that you won't see until you get to the convention and need them, are going to be there to help those of us who let the smoke out of our computers. There'll be people there to help you get around this technology and learn that it's not that difficult and it can be your friend. So this is going to be, we're going to aim at both ends of the spectrum. The older modelers who may not be as computer savvy, and the younger modelers who don't have the money to go travel, they can now come to this convention and see what goes on and maybe even teach us old farts something. I don't know.
I want to comment real quick because part of what I think is exciting about this whole idea of having a virtual convention, besides the fact that anybody in the world can come, is you don't have to be an NMRA member. Because anybody can register. We are not closing it off to only NMRA members. My feeling is that if anybody isn't already an NMRA member and comes to this convention, they will want to be one. That's one thing that I think I'll be surprised if that doesn't happen. But the other thing is, it also doesn't limit the age of people who can come either. Like you're saying, kids are welcome. Anybody who has a computer is welcome. All you have to do is pay the $49, and then you will get all the information that it takes to come to the convention. And, you know, the cool thing, at least to me, and I've talked about this before in the past, when we went to Salt Lake City in 2019 for the convention there, I made a video about that event. And I talked to hundreds of people, and I am not exaggerating. I talked to literally hundreds of people. And more often than not, the comment was made that people came originally, because one of the questions I was asking people was, how many times have you come to a national convention? And most people had been to multiple national conventions. And those people said, I came the first time because I was interested in trains. And every single time after that, I've come back to see my friends. And that's really something that, to me, really registers on the radar, because it's an excuse, you know, it's a convenient excuse to go and hang out with your friends for a week. And this is a place where you can make friends that share your interest, because I've talked to a lot of people not at the convention who are, I don't want to say embarrassed, but let's just say that a lot of the people in their social circles don't really get it. Like, you play with trains, huh? Like, what? So they don't talk about it. Well, you know, here's a place where you can talk about that. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean to make it sound like a stigma or something, but that's really how it is for a lot of people, especially younger people in school. Because, you know, kids in school can be really, really cruel, and they will make fun of you and harass you and all those things. You can meet some of the people your same age, or some people in your peer group at a convention like this, and have a whole new group of friends that you can socialize with about the topics that you care about. And I don't know, I think that's cool. Casting a wider net, you know, out, or building a bigger tent, you know, all these metaphors that we can use that sort of refer to building up the hobby and bringing more people together in the hobby is something that really excites me about this. That's really what my channel here on YouTube is about, is casting that net or building that tent and bringing as many people into the hobby as possible, because it's worthwhile, right?
And I think you hit a really valid point. I've got friends. My first national was in 2000 in San Jose, because it was in my backyard. I made friends there that are friends today. So this is 20 some odd years later. And every convention I've gone to, I've either made friends or reinforced friends. And not just in California or in the United States. I've got friends in Germany, Australia, New Zealand, England, Canada, all over the place. These are friends. It's, you know, hi Clark, how are you doing? Hi Nobby, how are you doing? These are people that I didn't know beforehand, and I would not have met except through the NMRA. And that's more than just trains. That's a social, a part of my social health, a part of my life that's been improved because of this.
But Pat, I think it's really important that many times those friendships are kind of partitioned. They start in your division with local activities, occasionally go to the region, but really to make those friends at a national level, those are typically made at a national convention. And I think this is the point, is that this really is an opportunity to do that. And by the way, the concept of how to have more youth engagement, I think, is a very interesting question for us to consider. And hopefully we can think about some ways to do something there. So check back. If you're younger, check back to the website and see if there may be some opportunities there.
And if you're from outside the area and you've got kids in your region who are interested, this might be the time to invite them in, to go along with you as a guest, so to speak, and maybe show them what the hobby has the potential to be.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, here's the really interesting thing to me about kids in the hobby. You know, kids go to school full time, and teachers are always trying to figure out how to get kids engaged. It's a real challenge, right? here you have a hobby that if a kid's interested in it, can teach them planning, drafting, electronics, woodworking, art. I mean, just the list goes on and on. And I've had numerous conversations and even panel discussions like this on this very topic. And so I think that expanding or having the convention accessible by kids is a great opportunity for them and for the hobby to endure. So what does it say? I think more than youth, but people who work for a living don't want to spend all their vacation time. Exactly. Yeah, we talked about that earlier, Andrew.
Very valid.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
Andrew, you're exactly right. Because the problem is when you're working to go to a convention, feels like you're stealing time from your family. I mean, when we were working, all of us were so embedded in doing those things. So you're absolutely right. It's hard to do. It's hard to even justify for yourself to do sometimes. I know, my time in the hobby, there was a period of about almost 20 years where there just was no way to participate because of work. And if I'd had the opportunity to participate virtually during those years, I probably would have been a much more active modeler through the years, because I could have participated even though I was working and traveling and doing other things. It just was impossible to do it in a physical way. So absolutely.
Now, one of the other things, and Sydney's been putting this into the chat, but we've talked about a lot of stuff here, and it's almost all of it is on the webpage. If you go to the website for Rails by the Bay, you can see the clinics, you can go to volunteer, you can see those breakout rooms, you can see the layout tours, you can see there's prototype tours that we didn't even talk about, and they're on the webpage too. All this information is there, more than we can possibly talk about. So I would really encourage you to go there, take a look, register for the convention, volunteer for the convention. Those are the things that we really need you to do right now. So take a look at the webpage. It's really a neat place. And there's another spot on the webpage right up front. It's called News and Updates. If you go there, you can find out all the stuff that's brand new that doesn't even show up on the website at first. So you go to that new and update, and you can see the latest layout tours, see the latest schedule for all the clinics. All that's right in the new and updates.
I have a top secret pro tip. I wasn't going to do this, but I want to do it. So people know that I produce layout tours for this channel, right? Everybody knows that, right? I'm sure everybody watching knows that. And they have a reputation for being pretty good. Well, I have actually 2 right now, layout tours that are coming up. One is going to be available to the general public, meaning everybody watching right now, about a month from now. Another one's going to be available the following month. Well, if you're an attendee to the Rails by the Bay, you can see those now, right? You don't have to wait. Usually you have to be a Patreon supporter in order to see layout tours before they come out. But right now, if you go to Rails by the Bay, you sign up, you can go see those tours. So I don't know. Maybe it's a little carrot for some people, but they're also really good because I'm also using these 4K cameras now. So I'm excited about it. I wish I could just put them out all at once, but I have to sort of trickle that stuff out so that it's because, if you put everything out all at once, people don't know what to watch. And not everybody has, 4 hours a day to watch stuff. Yeah, thanks for that, though. I want to mention to people watching that the people on this panel, me included, okay, we're all pretty key in the planning of this thing. So if you have any questions that you want to ask us, it would be a great time to put the questions into the chat. And whoever's here who knows about whatever the question is can certainly answer it. But, maybe you want to go, but you're not sure about something. Ask the question because that's what we're doing this for. I intentionally made this crew lounge just for the convention so that anybody that has questions, we can certainly cover those.
So by the way, just while you're getting some of those questions into the chat, notice my name. And so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to ask everybody at the convention to do what I've done, which is put your name, where you're from, and your NMRA affiliation. Because, it's very interesting when you go to a convention, everybody's got a badge on. And of course, the bad conventions, they make it so the badges can flip over so you can't see them. But the cool thing here is we all have a badge. So again, imagine for a moment that the 5 of us were in a breakout room, or the 4 of you were there and I jumped in. You're going to know who I am, where I'm from, and I'm going to know who you are and where you're from. And if I see somebody that's local there and say, wow, you're 5 miles from me, all of a sudden we've got that connection. And gee, maybe we should start modeling together or operating together or whatever it is. So, one of the things is we really have that capability to make connections in a way, because we're encouraging everyone to basically do just like you do at a convention. Who are you? Where you're from? We can't put on here that I'm a narrow gauge railroader. That's not quite big enough, but because you went to the narrow gauge room, you kind of know you are. So,
something else that's funny is if you go to the Great Hall and you're looking at breakout rooms and you see someone you don't want to see, then you can avoid them too.
As long as they don't see you.
I'm just saying.
No, it's just kind of interesting. I'm noticing in this group that we happen to have 3 narrow gauge modelers, and then Bruce is standard gauge. And I don't even know, John, what do you model? Victoria's Secret or?
Yes, I'm an underwear model, and Pat, I'm very disappointed. I thought you watched my channel. If you watch my channel, you would know, because just yesterday, a video came out of me putting DCC into an N-scale Kato P42, and I also lit up the marker lights and made that all into the ditch lights and the marker lights. Yeah,
I may be giving you some work.
Yeah, so I do N scale, but I also do HO scale.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I actually enjoy working on HO a little more just because it's a lot easier to see. So, and I understand that, right? I understand the older you get. I don't know if I'll ever be as old as you, Pat, but I understand the older you get, the more likely you are to go to the larger scales for that reason.
And Sparky, I agree with you. That is a scary concept. I'm just replying to one of the response to Dr. Devondre.
It was kind of interesting. There was a comment earlier about smaller layouts, and I think that's one of the other things that we're saying is that a lot of modelers are picking larger scales and smaller layouts to build much more detailed models. That's one of the other things that I think we're seeing in the hobby is. Because if you look at the demographics in the United States, more and more people are living in cities and tend to live in places with limited physical space. So, addressing those both what I call smaller layouts, but also detail versus scale. If I'm building a 20 by 40 foot room, I was actually at one of the clubs here locally, and they've been going for about 10 years, done a brilliant job of building the layout out, but their level of detail is fairly low. If you as a modeler want to have high levels of detail, you build a smaller layout and may choose a larger scale for that level of detail. So, it's really interesting that I think we're seeing some changes in the hobby because of the way demographics are and the environments we're living in. So, few of us can afford a 20 by 40 foot room today.
Yeah, and at least on the West Coast, we don't have basements, so you're taking up valuable living space if you're going to build a layout in your house.
Well, some modelers have gone to the level of actually excavating under their houses to create a basement for their model railroad because they didn't want to leave their house. But that's a fairly major step.
I've actually done that. When I moved in, we had a wine cellar with about 4 foot, 3.5, 4 feet, and we removed 40 yards of dirt, finished it off for my layout room.
And I'm noticing one gentleman here is from Kentucky, and shelf layouts are a big thing. You definitely want to get into the LD SIG room and talk to folks there. Byron is just an absolute great resource, but there'll be all kinds of people who will give you all kinds of encouragement and good ideas about doing bad things in this hobby, how to take just a shelf and build a beautiful layout. So it's a resource. If you've not been to a national, you've not been to an LD SIG meet, this will be an opportunity for you, and it's well worth your time to go see that.
You know, you mentioned Byron, Pat. I've had, because of my part in this process, I've had a chance to see every single recorded clinic that's going to be on this in this convention, and the quality of the content overall is just off the charts. There's more MMRs than I can remember, but besides that, I remember because I started editing for Byron's presentation. I ended up watching it. I didn't have time to watch it, but I started listening to what he was saying, and I was so interested in what he was saying and the thought process and the philosophy behind it, the approach behind it. And it's like just that 2-hour segment of Byron talking about making only new mistakes is worth the entire convention. I'm not kidding. I'm not over exaggerating this. That's how good even just that one presentation is. I mean, I'm really, really impressed. Also, Steve Gust, he was the former SP and UP dispatcher. His presentation also, I started to edit the thing and I got very interested in what he was saying. That also alone is worth watching the convention for. I mean, I can go down the list. There's like at least a dozen of these clinics that I remember I started watching them because I was so interested in what the person was saying. So there's something to say about the level of quality in the content of the clinics that are coming off. So, and actually, that's a hats off to you, Bruce, for finding so many really excellent presenters.
Yep.
So the layout design special interest group is Byron's doing that, but they've got a special whole another part of the convention. Normally there's a SIG room, and in the SIG room the Op SIG's there and the LD SIG is there. The LD SIG has decided that they're going to have like a parallel track, so if you want to go over and visit them, you can do that, and they're going to have consultation on layout design. So if you have a layout that you have questions about that you're still working on, you can take it to them. I'll see if I can't get the link over to Sydney, and she can post it over there. But
those links, will be in the convention, and everybody who comes is going to be able to go do that night. And just at a personal level, about probably year and a half ago now, I actually had started a design for a module and was trying to do a module that had great scenery and also had great operations, and had a design for it, and went and did one of the LD SIG reviews. And it was amazing that really pointed out some things that I had done in the design that were not as prototypical as they could be, but also some things that would make the operations complicated in ways that didn't make sense. I actually took that back and used that to redesign the module, and it was pretty significant. And I can see how for anybody who's building a layout, it's a great opportunity to get some feedback. And if you happen to get Byron, Byron I think has designed 400 layouts, so he's kind of probably seen it all. If you think about all the challenges you have in a layout space, right? It's too small, it's too weird shaped, it's too this, and all the challenges you have in a layout owner who wants to put the whole Southern Pacific into a 10 by 15 foot room in O scale. So he's dealt with all of those. So I think talking to him, you'll get great insights, and some of you may decide that he's somebody you want to actually work with more closely in your designs too. But it's really an opportunity that you would never get unless you go to a national convention to meet with some of these people that you can meet with here that are doing things at a national level.
So, something else that the LD SIG does at a national convention, and I'm saying this from a personal standpoint, they have this Wednesday tour where they go out and they visit layouts. And it's different from all the bus tours and all the other tours because you go out, it's a self-drive tour, and you get to spend time with the layout owners. Well, in this convention, if you look on the layout tours on the main page, some of them are marked LD SIG. You look at them, they'll be marked LD SIG, and those are special interest layouts for the layout design special interest group. And those are going to be on some of the panels. And so you'll get a chance to talk to the owners just like you would on the tour. So we're trying to incorporate a lot of the stuff that actually happens at a regular convention. Like I said, I've been doing these tours since 2008, and I went on the tour in 2000. That first convention that you were at, Pat, the LD SIG had a great tour. We had a dinner over at, we got rides on the Billy Jones Wildcat Railroad and had dinner over at the park. And then we took off and went to some of the layouts. I remember driving up the hill to see Harold Lloyd's thing, up on the hill, and he had a different convention or a different layout that time. But it's really a neat thing to do, and we've brought that to this convention.
And a point with that is the LD SIG tours, in a lot of cases, it's an under-the-skirt tour. You're looking at partially built. I remember one of them in Vancouver, BC, where the guy had 5 feet of bench work up, and he had paper on the floor in his layout room so you could see what it's going to look like, and he was describing it. And that's something that the LD SIG does that's different than the regular tour, convention layout tours, is you get to see the in-process part of the layout. And that's a very important part of the tour to me, is that's where I learn things. And I learn how he's doing this. Oh, that's a neat technique for a bridge across that opening, things like that.
We've got a clinic on Thursday morning in the Daylight Clinic track that's being presented by Bill Decker. And Bill used to live in the Bay Area. He doesn't live in the Bay Area anymore. He's up in Oregon. But Bill's a friend of mine, and I remember going to Bill's house before Bill had even moved into his new house.
This
and
is
he
the
took
Oregon?
me down to the basement. It wasn't finished yet. And he's taking me around, and he says, I'm going to put the yard over here and this part of the layout over here, and it'll be double deck. And he's telling me about places. Well, I knew the places. And so I could kind of catch Bill's vision. Next time my wife and I went up, he had paper down on the floor with drawings and stuff. And so you see the development of this whole layout. And he's done the same thing in his clinic on Thursday. So you can see the layout from basically start to where it is now. And he's operating. It's a really great layout. So I'd really recommend that as a clinic if you have any thoughts about layout design and how it goes, how the operations play into that. So you get to do that under the skirt thing. I like that example, Pat. It really is. You get to see the development of a layout.
Yeah, you had a pretty good one about something similar, Bruce, when you talked about Sanborn maps and using maps for planning your layout. That was a very interesting clinic. Phil did a really cool clinic about 3D printing the insides of structures, the structural part of a building.
The framing.
The framing. I thought that was really cool. I mean, there's all kinds of Frank's clinic about the magic of scale model railroading display with Charlie. Actually, Charlie Getz did the one with Chris, but you did the one that was the building of it.
Mike Blumenstock.
It's really cool. I mean, that's all. It's Pat, you didn't do a clinic. What are you doing on this panel?
Absolutely nothing, and I'm doing it well. I do nothing well. You can ask anybody who knows me. No, but
in fairness, I didn't do a clinic either, but it's my channel, so
yeah.
Are we telling stories about Pat? I'll tell a story about Pat as long as we're on this. In 2000, Pat asked me to come out and help him because Pat's with a model railroad club up in San Leandro, and Pat said, I need some extra people to come out and help. Well, they got put on a layout tour at the last minute because somebody had canceled, and it was in the middle of the week. They couldn't get all their members to come up. So he tapped me and said, Bruce, can you come up and help? So I said, sure. Well, I was with my 12-year-old son. We went up to the layout, and they said, all you have to do is run the train. It's an NCE layout. Here's the throttle. Here's how it works. And they showed my son how it worked. I was there for 3 hours. I never got to touch the throttle. My son was 12 years old, ran for the whole time. It was great fun.
But again, I got a chance to meet Bruce and become more friends with Bruce, and now we're fast friends. And this is the type of stuff that will happen at the convention. You're going to get a chance to see layouts, and say you go look at Jack Burgess's layout on this tour, and you're not going to be able to go see it in reality, but you're going to be back in town in 8 months. You'll have contact to Jack. You can say, Jack, I'm going to be out in 8 months out in the Bay Area for business or a vacation or whatever. Can I come by and see your layout? The odds are he may let you in. And I'm picking Jack just because it's a name that I know and he's another friend. But it could be any one of the layouts. You may run into somebody and say, I'm going to be back at this point in time. Yes, Barkley, that is absolutely true. But you can get in touch with the owners, and you can sometimes get a personal tour. And again, you get the secrets, you get the under the skirt stuff. You get to find out what they did right and what they did wrong. And most layout owners I know will freely admit what they did wrong. And I can't stress how much I've learned from the various nationals. And I've only gone to stuff on the West Coast, except for Salt Lake City 2 years ago. I mean, it's been basically up and down the West Coast for me. But this is your chance to see how the other half lives and not spend $1,500 on hotel rooms and $500 on airfare. You get a chance to see stuff without having to make the big expenditure initially, and then you say, "Hey, I want to go back and talk to these people."
Pat, if those are real numbers, I want you to plan my next trip.
I wish I could get them that cheaply. I tried to figure out. I think I figured at $175 a night, it would have cost me close to $1,700 or $1,500 to stay in Salt Lake City. I had help on the room for that one, but yeah, I mean, no, for me, I'm going to take my little house trailer and sleep in the trailer because I can afford that. But no, I mean, but that's the expensive part of this hobby is sometimes traveling. So we're going to try to, again, going forward, future nationals might have some of this stuff virtually, so not everybody has to fly cross country to go to a convention. That's we're trying things that may or may not work, and we're going to learn from it. And everybody who comes to the convention has access to our resources. You can ask the committee, you can ask Phil, you can ask John at the convention, hey, how did you do this, or why did you do this? And we'll let you know.
Yay!
I was going to say, yeah, right. I was going to say it sounded like someone was going to say something. Was that you, Phil?
No. I just was responding to the comment about a registration and
we got a volunteer tonight.
Signed up tonight. No, you're absolutely right. It's
the only bad thing about that is once you volunteer once, you're going to find it's addictive, and you're not going to be able to stop. I'll warn you now. I mean, it's
it's funny you should mention that, Pat. I started volunteering to help at the SBHRS. That's our version in the South Bay of where you have the SLHRS, right? And now, anytime a volunteer thing comes up or any kind of an activity like that, I'm a sucker, man. I can't say no to anybody. So,
and again, volunteering, right. I can stress that volunteering, you will meet people. And again, these people will become friends.
And one of the really cool things to remember, because we're doing this using Zoom, and the reason we chose to use Zoom for this is because almost everybody has been in a Zoom meeting the last year and a half. It's kind of the way we maintained our sanity, I guess, depending on your viewpoint. But if you've used chat, And most of you are putting over here in the chat questions. If you come into a breakout and there's somebody you want to talk to, private chat is there. You can send them a message, say, hey, what's your email? You get their email back. It's almost impossible to do that in a physical convention. There are a few modelers who have cards they give out, and you can get a business card from them. But most people, you're trying to write it down, and that. So it's it's a real opportunity to make those connections if you really focus on it.
I don't know what you said, Phil, but look, everybody left while you were talking.
I just alienated everybody. I didn't ask you for your email address yet. Everybody thinks I'm going to ask them to volunteer.
To plug in my Mac, the battery's like dead.
Oh, is that what you were doing, Frank?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been going for about an hour and a half now, so maybe we should do a once around our virtual table. I don't see a lot of other questions coming in, so maybe we should do a once more around the virtual table here and then call it a night. But I do want to thank you guys for coming, because I could have sat here and talked for an hour and a half. Believe me, I could have done it, about all the cool stuff that's going on with the convention. I am, even though I'm as tired as I am and done as much as I've done, trying to get all this content prepared, I'm still excited about it. And really, I think that excitement is what's keeping me going. There's a light at the end of the tunnel right now for having the content fully prepared, which is also keeping me going. So, but I'm excited. I don't know that there has been or will be a virtual train-related convention, anything like what we've come up with here. And I'm not saying anything bad about anybody else's efforts. I think that everybody who's been doing stuff is to be commended, because it's kept a lot of people going through a pretty rough time with this pandemic. So my hat's off to everybody. All I'm saying is that we've concentrated on the things that most of those other offerings don't have. The social interaction, the ability that if you have a group that you want it, that's something I wanted to mention is, and we've talked about it, but I want to make sure it's really crystal clear for the people watching. If you have a group that's a train related, model railroad related, it could be a prototype railroad group that you want to have a breakout room at this convention, just sign up for the convention and do it. All you have to do is let us know. Anybody can have a breakout room. And if you tell us when you want to have it hosted, we'll tell everybody when there's going to be somebody in there to talk to you. It's a really good place to get some awesome exposure to the people that you want to reach. So I just want to make that point. And I've been told here from off camera that you don't even have to be registered in the convention to have a room. So, I mean, it seems like a great opportunity for me. That's all I'm going to say as my last go around the table. So, Frank, you're next to me on my screen. Why don't you go next?
Well, I remember on the committee when we talked about doing this, when we knew we couldn't hold a real convention, and we didn't want to have what happened in Salt Lake. We wanted to have something. So this is our offering. I think people will really enjoy it, and $49 is extremely inexpensive. A lot of people pay that for a haircut. I don't have enough hair to pay for that. So that's my 2 cents.
It looks like Phil, I don't know if you guys are in the same orientation as you are on my screen, but Phil, I think you're next to Frank on my screen. So what's your last 2 cents?
I think my answer is very simple. I think you said it, just do it. Go ahead and go get registered. What you don't want to have happen is start hearing about on Thursday of the convention, Wednesday and Thursday, that, wow, this is really cool, and you've missed it. So, it's the best opportunity. Just go do it. Get registered, get involved. And if you can't come to the whole convention, so what? You're still going to have a great time when you're there.
And you can catch what you miss on the replay.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Sounds like that was the period.
That was it. I'm not going to stop. I think I kind of believe a bit. If we haven't convinced you in the last hour and a half that you've spent with us, does this make sense to do? You're just going to stay home and watch TV.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad to say, but I think you're exactly right.
Right. I think it's a compelling. My personal belief is it's an incredibly compelling case. Compared to what I spend money on in the hobby. I mean, I cannot open Scenery Express. Just opening it requires that I put a down payment of $50. So it's same thing at Tony's. Well, Tony's is more like 100. But the perspective here is think about those, and like I said, your comment on Byron's, because I actually did Byron's clinics, and it is pretty amazing that there are these things you think about, and you've been looking at doing something, you realize, wow, that was something I'd actually considered, and he's right, that wouldn't be a great idea. I really should do this way. And one hint like that when you're planning your layout not only could prevent potential suicide, but could save you hundreds or even thousands of dollars in lost cost and rework to solve a problem you could have solved at the beginning because you learned about it at this convention. So like I said, just do it. Go register, get over it, and go do it.
Yeah. And think about the time and aggravation that it also saves. I mean, forget about the cost. Think about the time and aggravation that you could save yourself by learning from somebody else's mistake or taking somebody's advice that maybe has seen something that you haven't seen yet, right? So,
and by the way, for both any modeler, one of the other things that I really want to talk about is there's a lot of model railroading, what I'll call technology, in this convention. We have clinics on 3D printing, on airbrushing, on Cricut, on other things, but also in the what we call the Cool Tools breakout room. There will be birds of a feather sessions on each of those topics and on other tools. So one of the things I find with a lot of modelers today is they want to buy something that allows them one of these new tools. I mean, with 3D printers under $200, it's a great opportunity, but deciding which 3D printer to use, what its applications are, this is a great opportunity to get that education, not just from one or two people, but from a fairly large group of people that are actually doing it and doing different kinds of projects with those tools. So, as you plan out the next year and the things you want to do, again, it's a great opportunity to build for that. I'll leave it off to Pat now because it's probably time for Pat to.
Yeah.
I think I've said too much already, but I'm going to make repeat a comment I made earlier. This is 5 trips to Starbucks. You cannot beat that with a stick. It's really the resources that are going to be available. I ask a favor as a member of the committee, both during the convention and after the convention, send notes to the committee about what did and didn't work, because that's the only way we're going to learn. I had a photography instructor years ago said, you don't learn anything if you don't make mistakes. I can guarantee you we are going to make mistakes, but they are not intentional. They're not out of neglect. They're just things that happened. And if you give us a clue on how to make it better, not just say that really stunk, but if you did this and this, it might make it easier or better. We're going to be listening to you, and there will be people from other committees for future conventions that are going to be watching what happens here. We'll pass that on to them. So going forward, they're going to be able to learn from it. It's all we can say is anything that we learn from you is going to make it a better convention for you, and it is your convention. We don't need to put this convention on for ourselves. We can sit and talk to ourselves all day long. We're putting this on for everybody, and I've been working on this in one way or another for almost 4 years now, and I'm glad to see it go by, because now I get to go relax and do my own modeling, so taking it backstage. And Phil mentioned technology. I work in ON30 and I work in FN3, which is 120.3 scale, 45 millimeter gauge, large scale models. I'm working on an FN3 model right now that's going to be battery powered. We're absolutely the antithesis of technology. I mean, two AA cell batteries, how antique can you get? So, I mean, there's just the whole range of modeling is going to be involved in this convention, and we really would love to have you there. And Andrew, we really wish we could have a judged contest or something of that nature, and it's just not practical right now. Maybe in 3 or 4 years, as technology improves, it might become practical. But right now, go to the Modeler Showcase. It'll be the next best thing. You're going to have people talking about what they did. And I know I go to the contest room at a convention to learn things. Hey, that guy did something really neat, and I could do it better. And I think that's part of what we're working for, is that Frank and Earl, with what they're going to put out there, you're going to learn all sorts of new things, and I'm sure you're going to have the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. And as Byron always says, Byron Henderson, always make new mistakes. And so we're just hoping to see everybody here.
Hey, Bruce, thanks, Pat. Bruce, before you go, I want to bring up something here real quick and just comment, if that's okay with you. Sparky's talking about virtual events where cameras can be there to show stuff. And this is something we didn't talk about, but it is something that's on our radar, at least for the PCR. And that is to have some kind of a virtual component to the in-person conventions henceforth, because we do want to reach people who are mobility challenged or proximity challenged or financially challenged, to be able to get to these things where we could have something that's virtual. Maybe one of the clinic rooms could have a live streamed day of clinics for people who can't be there physically. So Sparky, I think you're on the right track, and that's definitely something that is on our radar, at least in this region. I suspect that Gordy Robinson, being the new president of the NMRA, has that same kind of thought process going through his head. Well, as a matter of fact, I can tell you he does, because I've talked to him about it. And we forgot to mention Gordy's going to be there twice for Meet the President, where people can go into a breakout room and talk to him for an hour. So, sorry, just something else came up. I mean, we could sit here and talk, and I'll still be bringing up great features, right? So, sorry.
Absolutely. I think you brought a great point up.
Okay.
Phil, just very briefly about this idea of, in this convention, what we're doing, because it's all virtual, we're both bringing the content, the people who have, whether it's a clinic or a layout tour, to the convention, as well as the attendees. And in the future, we need to think about that both ways, right? How do we have attendees that are not local to the convention be able to participate in some percentage of the convention content, but more importantly, in a significant percentage of the socialization at the convention? And then the other side is the ability to bring content in. If you think about it, layout tours have typically been constrained to those that were physically by a convention. As far as I know, virtually every convention is in a fairly major metropolitan area. So by definition, we've limited layout tours that can be exposed to those that are in major metropolitan areas. This is an opportunity to have a much broader range of layouts brought into a convention. So I think it's a great point for the future.
One other thing I'd like to touch on, and it's a sensitive item, and a lot of people said, no, why don't we broadcast these clinics to the whole world and things like that? And as a photographer, not my primary profession, I have a real job, but my hobby is photography, and I'm familiar with using that medium as a commercial medium. And people get concerned when we start saying, well, there's copyright infringement issues. So if we're not broadcasting it to the whole world, there's a reason for it, because sometimes the clinician only has one-time usage, and we ask that people respect that. And me as a photographer, I put my work out there. I don't expect it to be taken by everybody, because that is a sellable product of mine. That's my result. You'd no more go and take a photograph or take a piece of artwork off of a wall in a museum. And I think that's people say, well, why aren't we doing this? We're doing it out of respect for the clinicians and for their limitations. And we ask the attendees respect that. That's all. It's just not being hard-nosed or picky. It's a matter of consideration.
Okay.
Bruce, you're up.
Bruce.
I'll shut up, Bruce. It's all yours.
Oh, wait. Let me say, no.
Just a couple of things before I make my final comment. But, Andrew asked a question about model contest and models and stuff. And we talked briefly about the showcase, but we also talked briefly about the possibility of having a railroad prototype modelers breakout room. And I think that's a great idea. And it's a way of anybody and everybody who's at the convention to show their models. You can show them right in front of the camera, just hold them up or maybe take a slide, and we'll be able to share slides in the breakout rooms. So all that can be done, and you can have some of that interchange. The other thing I was going to talk about is the comment that Sparky made. I was the clinic chairperson before we decided to go virtual. And one of the ideas that we had was to set up a camera in a clinic room to show the close-ups of the modeling that we were going to have in the clinic. Because even in a clinic room, if you're sitting in the back of a clinic room, you can't see what they're doing on the table. But with a camera, you can focus in, and all you see is the fingers and the model right there in front of you, and everybody in the room can see it. Well, with the virtual thing, we're going to do that. So we're going to do some of that in this convention. Not as much as we probably could, but we've thought about it, and we really want to go forward with that idea of having a camera up close and personal to the models and to the techniques that we're trying to convey. What I would share is two things. One is the content that we've talked about during this hour and a half is all there on the web page. It's a lot of it is that you get the snippets. What you're going to get is the whole meal if you go to the convention. So you need to register and be able to see it. And if you miss one of the dishes, you can go back and catch it next week or the week after, because it'll be there. So you can do it. You can go to those breakout rooms and interact face-to-face with the clinicians and with other people that are knowledgeable as well. So all that's going to be there. So register, volunteer. Another thought I had, and I've been to Zoom meetings. We talk about the expenses, but with a Zoom meeting, you're at home. If you get hungry, walk down and grab something out of the fridge. If you need to take a bio break, get up and do it. You're not tied into that clinic room. And if you want to do something else while the clinic is going, I've been at Zoom meetings where people are doing modeling during the Zoom meeting. So you could do modeling while you watch. It's all possible. It's all possible. So I'd say, hey, bring the $49. Join us for that first, full week in July. We'd welcome you. It'd be, it's going to be great.
What I'm thinking is that people will spend $49 to go to the convention, and they're going to learn about so much of this other stuff that it's suddenly going to become more expensive because they'll have to buy all the tools they saw, right? Clark Kooning does a great clinic about tools. I mean, people are going to want to buy 3D printers, right?
Oh, I went to the narrow gauge convention a couple of years ago, and I think I dropped close to $400 on tools at the convention. So
right.
No, we're not doing you any favors. The first joint is free, but after that, it's going to come out of your pocket.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just saying that someone else was making a comment about, boy, why does it cost so much? The cost of one piece of rolling stock is not much to attend virtually a 5-day convention with all the stuff that we just talked about for the past 90 for the past 110 minutes.
And like Bruce mentioned, you're not spending money for hotel food. You can go down to your refrigerator in the kitchen and grab it, and it's gonna be a lot cheaper.
Exactly. And you know, the fun thing is if you're in the webinar watching the clinics, you could even take the laptop into the bathroom with you because you don't have the camera and the audio to worry about.
Turn the camera off.
Yeah, just don't drop it in the can there. So
Are we back to underwear modeling now? Is that what?
well, yeah, I guess so. Well, I mean, I'm on the show, so it has to degenerate at some point, right?
For all the attendees who have been here today, thank you for being here. You've thrown some really, really great questions out there, and
Yes.
we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks to you guys on the panel here too. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come. I mean, we're all volunteering a lot of time to this thing, and this is more volunteer time if you want to think of it that way. But I do think that we covered most of the important stuff that we wanted to cover, and I thank you for your time. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close things out here unless last time around, anybody? Nothing? Okay.
Yeah, one more. Sparky's asking about the schedule. If you go to the web page, the schedule's there. You can take a look at the whole schedule. We don't really have time to go over the whole schedule, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And the one on the web page has links straight to the clinics.
Okay.
So you can get a description of the clinic straight from the schedule.
Cool.
I'm gonna throw a plug in for a real sleeper clinic, and that's Robert Patout has the basics of American steam locomotives. I wasn't sure. I saw that at the PCR regional convention back in April. If you have any interest in steam locomotives, see that clinic. It is worth the price of admission by itself.
Yeah, very in depth. And okay, if we're gonna do that, I want to talk about one more thing. It's not a clinic. It's not a clinic. It was the keynote address at the PCR convention, and that was Mike Osborne, who is a current Union Pacific employee who has been working. He started with Southern Pacific and now is with Union Pacific for the past 42 plus years on the line that goes over to Hatchapee. And he gives this story of going from the LA side to Bakersfield on a nighttime run on the LA BRF train. That is also an excellent presentation. And during the PCR convention, he went to the breakout room that the clinic goes on, and he was in there for an hour. People had so many questions after his presentation. He was in there for over an hour and a half. The other clinic was starting to spill into the room, and they were still in there talking about Mike Osborne's time on the LA BRF. That's why we have 3 different clinic goes on rooms this time around, and we actually learned something. But that also is another one of those sort of worth the price of admission clinics. So anyway, we can.
And by the time you add up 4 price of the admission clinics and the layout tours and that, again, we should have charged more.
I think we should have charged more. When people were asking me when the news came out, they're like, "Why are you charging so much?" I was like, "What? Charging so much?" But
And as they say, a good convention is the one where you don't have time to see it all. I guarantee this will be a great convention. I mean, I've gone to in-person conventions and missed so much. You're not going to miss as much here because you'll be able to see it later. But somebody complained they've got too much going on. Horse feathers.
well,
this is just great. I mean, this is.
You know what, Pat? The real answer to that question is, if you have too much going on that you're not going to be able to be there that week, then pay for the attendance and watch it over the next 4 weeks. Watch the stuff you want to watch over the next 4 weeks. That's something you don't get to do in any convention. I mean, even the virtual conventions that I've seen, most of them don't leave stuff up for more than a week or 2. So anyway, what else can we say? I mean, like Phil said earlier, if you've watched this and you're still not convinced, I don't know what to say. I'm speechless. And that's saying something for me. So thanks, guys. If you want to hang out for a second, I'm going to run the credits here, and we can chat for a minute when I end the stream, okay? So thanks again. And everybody, this coming week on Saturday, we have the next episode of Model Railroading with Jack Burgess, where we talk about hand tools, right? That's going to be a really good one. You'll see. So talk to you soon. And here we go.